So first of all, we wanted to ask why the setting in DC, the setting for New York in the first game was really iconic, and we understand that the second game is set about 7 months after the outbreak. Why DC specifically?
I think there are multiple reasons. If you look at the narrative going from New York City to Washington, D.C., ask some pretty interesting questions. I mean, it is one of the most fortified and protected cities in the world. So just how did we lose that city? And discovering that is, of course, going to be one of the narrative threads within the game. So that's narratively. But what really excites me about DC is that with a fairly small area, right? It's about 20% bigger than Manhattan, the Manhattan we created for the Division 1. It has so much more variety. It has a nature biome, it has wide open spaces, the mall, if you know it. It has suburbs with Georgetown. So all of these different areas, because when you think of New York is really a grid, it's tall buildings, it's a very different feel. So we're getting a lot more variety in terms of environment, but also in terms of gameplay feel. Because when you're shooting in a wide open space, that's very different from shooting in a metro or another claustrophobic space.
So we can expect to see more variety in terms of level design this time around?
100%.
Our next question is, would there be a greater emphasis on story and lore in the Division 2? Because in 1, we got a lot of interesting tidbits from little side objects, little side objectives that we could pursue, little notes that we could pick up along the way, and little audio recordings. But we did feel that the story did kind of take a dip or fall when we reached the endgame content. Will this persist in Division 2, like all the way to the end of the game?
Absolutely. But one thing for sure is that there's a story campaign, which, on the first Division was fairly meaty. It took players around 40 hours to finish it. It's going to be about the same thing on the Division 2. But we're saving one or two little surprises that are narrative and gameplay hooks that will drag people into Endgame and provide narrative and context and meaning to all of those things. And, even the raid that we announced yesterday is going to be narrative driven too.
One of the biggest questions that fans of the First Division 1 have is, are you guys planning on making perhaps a companion app for the Division 2? Something to sort out your storage and gear loadouts, because storage, while it was pretty expansive at the start of the game, it does tend to fill up pretty fast, and it can be a little frustrating to have to keep going back to change your loadouts. Will it be easier to change gear in Division 2? And are you planning on making a companion app similar to the one that we get for Destiny?
So, companion app, no, it's not in the plans. We really want to focus on the main game, the main experience, the post-launch content, and all of those resources. They need to be focused on that. So we really want to stay very focused. So no companion app. In terms of inventory management, of course, there are a lot of improvements in terms of inventory management compared to the first game. But even if you look at the first game, we've improved it dramatically from launch to what you can see in the game today.
Can you tell us anything about a potential dark zone or PvP area in the Division 2?
I can, but I won't, because I'm
right.
not allowed to.
So no talk about PvP modes at all or balance?
One thing's for sure is that when I think of the Division, when most people think of the Division, it's a super hybrid game, right? You can play all of the content either by yourself, the story-based content, the more emergent content, either by yourself or cooperatively. But of course there's PvP, of course there's competition. And I think that's one of the aspects that we've embraced as a team in terms of our endgame focus and an endgame first focus for the game, is that competition and leaderboards are a huge part of getting people really invested in long-term content. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a more announcements down the line.
Will you be making any tweaks to gear drops? For example, when we have different gear slots, all of it adding to our total gear level. So for example, if I had good gear for all of my slots except maybe my backpack or something, will gear drops be kind of lean into that? Like, will the game feature an intelligent loot system to give me a higher chance of getting that backpack drop to complete my set?
I'm actually not the right person to talk about that, but for me it's more It's more in the finer details of how we tune it later on. It sounds like a great idea. I just can't speak to it.
All right, no problem. Will any of our character progress from Division 1 be carried over to the Division 2?
So no, this is a brand new character, but June 14th, I think that's tomorrow, we're launching the Shield Initiative. So the Shield Initiative is 14 different collectibles that you can unlock in the first game. And they'll not only reward you with stuff in the first game, currency caches, patches, things like that, but they'll also reward you in the Division 2 with some exclusive items. So it's really worth jumping back into the game. Some are retroactive, so you'll get them automatically, and others you'll have to invest a little bit of time.
One big question for me, will character customization be expanded in the Division 2?
Yes! Now that's one thing I'm passionate about, because real choices for me is how my player looks. It's not the good and evil choices that you can have in games. So one of the things that was also a big advantage about having Summer is that it allows for a lot of different looks. So personalization, we're going to push that much further.
Could you tell us more about the raid that you guys just announced? How is it different from an Incursion from Division 1?
So first thing, 8 players. That's a huge difference. It's a huge difference in terms of approach, in terms of balancing, in terms of level design. All of those things are going to be very, very different. For me, it's the most hardcore of hardcore experiences. So it's going to be something that you're going to have to communicate heavily. You're going to have different specializations. You're going to synergize with different players. Did you play Stolen Signal?
No, I didn't. I only played the first one, the first Incursion.
If you look at Stolen Signal today, it's indicative of the direction we're going with the raid. So it's much more complex. There are choices. There are 3 different wings in a TV station that's been taken over by the Rikers, and there are puzzles to solve, that type of thing. So it requires a lot of investment and a lot of communication between players. Really high level, difficult, hardcore experience in Endgame.
So we can expect day 1 of the raid, lots of clans will be taking about 6 to 8 hours to even clear a run, or even more?
Don't know about the time, right? Because I'm always surprised. I'm always blown away by how fast things are actually beaten. But if I'm excited about one social feature, that's clans. And the brief, the high level brief is that it has to be the most accessible clan feature ever created on console or PC. Because I want people to experience the pleasure of playing in multiplayer through the clan system.
Will the raids have any matchmaking system like you had in the Division 1?
Yes, I think so. I think we're going to encourage people to matchmake through clans to encourage communication, so that the sort of random pickup group issues that you could have are ironed out a little bit, but we'll definitely have matchmaking for them.
So we got a brief glimpse of the Endgame Classes at the Ubisoft conference the other day. Could you go into a little bit more detail about those?
First thing is that specializations aren't really classes, because they're not mutually exclusive, right? You can do one and then pick another and do the next one. They are symptomatic of a type of playstyle, and those are really characterized by their signature weapons. Those signature weapons, the ones we presented yesterday, were the sniper rifle, the grenade launcher, and the crossbow. Now, each one will have a whole list of other things that you can unlock, including exclusive skill modifications further down the line. So it's a real, once you finish your progression on your character, it's a whole new progression with those type of playstyles in mind.
Final question from us. Will you be planning any sort of beta for the Division 2, and will Division 1 existing players get early access to it?
So we're planning a beta for sure. You can sign up today. I encourage you to. We had signups in the first 24 hours or 48 hours that are 5 times bigger than the first game. So a lot of people are signing up. Will we prioritize Division 1 players? Not necessarily. So sign up. It's going to be fun.